The War Within pre-patch is dropping in a couple of days. Described by some as the most important pre-patch in WoW's history, it also kind of feels like the most overwhelming. So much is changing, and not all for the better. We'll get to that in a second. So as always, to help others, but mostly myself, I put together like the hottest infographic covering all you need to know about this event and basically how to make the most of it without being overwhelmed. From warbands to leveling changes to skyriding to transmog, I'm going to systematically walk you through everything. And as always, the infographic itself will be available in this channel's community tab, so make sure to subscribe because there's more coming. So I think it's important to start by talking about what this event is not. If you've been watching kind of promotional materials about the pre-patch itself, you've probably seen these flashy images about the Radiant Echoes event. This is not what that is. This week, the Radiant Echoes event doesn't actually launch. That is going to launch 1 week later, and stay tuned for that because I have another infographic coming. So the first thing to remember here is that you want to chill. If you're in it for the collectibles, if you're in it for the mounts, the pets, etc., you still have a week to kind of prepare. You are not missing out on anything yet. Let's start nice and easy. Leveling, as always with these pre-patches event, is going to get faster. It's going to be like this overall reduction in the XP you need to reach 70, and the reason for this is that they want to make sure that the time you spend to reach max level in each expansion doesn't kind of explode as the expansions go on. So of course they're going to kind of shrink the interval, right? They're going to shrink the amount of XP needed. What's important here to realize, and kind of something useful for you to plan how you're going to level your alts, is that this XP reduction is not going to be uniform across the board. For the initial level, so for kind of the low levels, yes, there is going to be a drop in XP of roughly 20%, but it's not going to be that significant. The big gun, the big boys, as it were, are only going to come in later on in the game. The largest reduction in XP is going to take place between level 60 and 70, where a whooping 80% reduction is going to take place. Now, if you're someone like me who's always clawing to kind of try out a different alt, the fastest way to level is to do so in Mop Remix. Mop Remix is still going to be running for the next 2 or 3 weeks, so you still have time to level up characters there, and that is by far the fastest way to do it. However, be aware here, if you're going to level a character in Mop Remix, you have to be aware that you won't be able to take that character out of Mop Remix and into the game until Remix ends kinda in mid-August. So pick your poison, babe. And the final thing to mention here, and this is something that I know a lot of people are really excited for going into this, is that new players are no longer subject to the BFA curse. After Exile's Reach, as a new player, you're going to be instead moved to the Dragon Isles quests. No more BFA, dragonflight instead. Skyriding, which is really just the fancy new name for dragonriding. Yes, dragonriding has now become kind of this evergreen feature. It's going to be expanded upon in each expansion. There are going to be new glyphs scattered for you to collect for new power-ups. There are going to be new manuscripts for all you manuscripts enthusiasts out there. I know there's one of you. The thing to be most excited for with this change is that starting these reset, a whooping 464 mounts will now get the ability to skyride. Most of the collection, most of the roster of flying mounts at least, are going to get the ability to skyride. How do you trigger this? You go into your mount menu and you have a toggle which you can toggle on or off. Holy shit, this looks good. Now, this is one of those things that on the surface seem really good, right? We're going to have these mounts that can skyride. Diversity, hooray! But it's a bit more time consuming to kind of switch between the two styles of travel. In Dragonflight, whenever I would want to move from kind of a dragon riding mount to a normal mount, I would just, you know, have 2 mounts on my action bars and I could easily switch between them. Now, if you want to toggle normal flight, right, relative to dragon flying, you have to go and activate this toggle, which is going to change it for all mounts. And, you know, it's not a big complaint. This does not kind of ruin the the War Within for me, but it is something to keep in mind, and it is something that I hope they will address a bit later on. Finally, one missing mount that I think it's a bit weird is not there is the 500 mount, right? Like the Spectral Audoc. Like, what's up with that? Oh, fuck deals. This is the big one, right? Warbands. I think everyone and kind of their grandmothers are super excited for this game change, and I don't blame them. This actually feels to me like one of the most significant changes coming into WoW, because it literally changes the way you approach the game and the way you're going to play with your alts. Now, I'm not really sure if this is going to be for the better or worse. That's something that we'll have to see, but it's definitely something that a lot of people have been demanding for a long time. What are warbands exactly, and how are they going to work? Well, at their core, warbands are just an account-wide progression system. Everything you can kind of think about now that is individual to each of your characters, to each of your alts, kind of like achievements, reputations, currencies, and so forth, everything is going to become account-wide. Now, what does that mean in concrete terms? So, from the moment you log into your game, you're going to notice something different. Like, the login screen is going to have your characters chilling next to a fire. Now, this is the first important thing, and it's kind of a point of confusion I've seen in the community. This is not your warband. Your warband is everyone in your roster. All your alts are kind of part of your warband. These 4 bitches here, these are just your favorites, which you can change between from the selection menu. And if you hover over them, right, like the neat part here is that if you hover over your favorites, you're going to see a lot of information for them. You can see their gold, you can see their mythic plus, you can see their spec. It's all there, baby. Moving on, transmog collectors rejoice. Now, this is the change that I am personally most excited for, because transmog collection is something that I've been putting off for kind of a very long time, because it always felt overwhelming to me to run all these old raids kind of with characters of all different armor types, a plate wearer, a mail wearer, etc, etc. This will no longer be the case. Once the pre-patch goes live, every item that you loot, no matter its armor type and no matter what character you loot it on, is going to be added to your transmog collection. So yes, you can loot plate armor on, let's say, your priest, and it's still going to be added to your journal. Now, a point of confusion here that I've often seen posted about is, will you be able to wear armor types that are not for your class, let's say? So will priests be able to wear plate? No. Absolutely not. It's just that if you loot a plate item on your priest, then your death knights, warriors, paladins, etc., they are the ones who are going to be able to wear them. And yes, this applies to old tier sets. You can loot those class sets on any character and it's still going to be added to the armor, to your armor collection. I'm back. Next up, currencies. So when we're talking about quality of life changes, this is one of the most important ones. Currencies are always a hot point of contention in the community, whether they should be placed in the currency tab, whether they should fill up your bag. But importantly, transfer of currency between alts is now going to be easier than ever. All you have to do is to go in your currency tab and you're going to see this neat menu here. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory, broad. There's like an arrow there. It transfers. Most currencies will be transferable. However, note that not all of them will be transferable at an 100% conversion rate. For some of them, and I've listed them below, the conversion rate is going to be somewhat smaller, meaning that there will be a cut, kind of like a penalty for you to send the currency these specific currencies between your alts. Reputation. When it comes to reputations, things are still relatively straightforward. Most reputations, at least the ones going forward in the War Within and some of the Dragonflights one, are going to be account-wide. Gone are the days when you have to kind of go on each of your alts to progress them in order to unlock recipes. Starting with this pre-patch, all the reputation you earn on each of your character will be added to your warband reputation system. And once you've reached exalted with a certain faction with one character, it's exalted across the board. Something Something important to mention here is that this will not be applied retroactively to kind of all the previous reputations. This is something they'll be working on, kind of bringing these things back. But for now, as far as I understand, it's going to be the war within reputations as well as the basic dragonflight reputations. And finally, in terms of warbands, we're going to unlock the warband bank. The bank functions pretty much like a regular bank. You can even access it from the regular bank station. It's just that you can deposit items here that will then be picked up by all the other bitches in your warband. One thing to note is that there is a quest line in the game that you will be able to access, which is going to reward you remote access to this bank, so you can go at it at any point in time. Bank, at first you're going to have 1 tab, but you'll be able to unlock up to 5 tabs, although they do tend to get a bit pricey towards the end. Before we move on, just look at this. Crisp, beautiful. So finally, as you know, there's a lot of information going on in the air about this whole patch. So I think it's important to end this video by talking about what is not coming. And these are the 6 things. First of all, the Radiant Echoes event, as I mentioned earlier, will not be launching with this reset. Instead, it will come 1 week later. And I have an entire guide prepared for that as well. I have an entire infographic up and ready to go. It's gonna be fun. I cannot wait to talk about that as well. The second thing that is not coming with the pre-patch, and it's not actually coming with the pre-patch event either, are going to be the hero talents. The hero talents are only going to be unlockable as you start leveling up. Between 70 and 80, you're going to unlock a point at every level. You know, you cannot level in the pre-patch. Those are not a thing. Next, delves. So for people who miss Bronzebeard, you're going to miss him still because he's not present. Delves are not testable yet. We're going to have to go to the new continent of Khazalgar or whatever once the War Within launches, and that's where we'll meet our favorite Mustachio. Speaking of, the continent itself is also not going to be available. You won't be able to test all the new zones. I don't think anyone expected this, but I did see some people kind of thinking, okay, are we going to get there? No, the continent itself, the dungeons themselves are also not going to be available. And I know those dungeons look rad. I think one of the sour points with Dragonflight were the dungeons itself. I have a video planned where I want to kind of talk about all the things that went wrong with Dragonflight, and dungeons are definitely at the top of the list for various reasons. I'm super excited for kind of a palette cleanser, and from what I've seen, the War Within dungeons look really nice, but they are not something that we will be able to test just yet. It is something coming later.